Welcome to Khanversations. I'm Muqtedar, your host, and I have with me today Lieutenant General VP Singh, who is retired but who has served in a highly decorated capacity for the Indian Army. He was an infantry officer. He also had international missions, and he was for many years the director of Rashtriya Rifles. General Saab, I want to give you my condolences for the Rashtriya Rifles soldiers who were killed, the martyrs in Poonch attack by the terrorist. I'm sure that must have affected you greatly. So please accept my condolences. Today, General VP Singh is going to talk to me about an article published in the Council of Foreign Relations Journal Foreign Affairs, in which a very prominent Indian voice, at least in the United States, on India relations, Ashley Tellis, who is a senior fellow at the Carnegie Foundation. It's a think tank based in Washington, D.C. I will be posting a link to the article in the description of this video. So those of you who are interested in the article can take a look at it. And in that article, he made some very interesting, you could also say provocative claims about India's approach and India's attitude towards the United States, and that is what we are going to discuss. But before that, do the needful, such as subscribe to the channel, click the bell icon, make sure you like this video. This is a very important conversation, so I also ask you to share it with your political, social, academic, and friends and networks. So moving forward, General Saab, welcome to Khanversations.
Thank you so much, Professor Saab. It's my pleasure to be on your show.
I'm very honored, sir. So Ashley Tellis makes some very profound arguments. He's basically saying, if I were to summarize it in one ride, that India is a free rider that is taking America for a ride. That is the brutal way of summarizing his article. But in a much more nuanced way, what he is saying is that while the United States and India's relationship, strategic partnership, defense partnership has become increasingly intense in the last 3 decades, well, in the 21st century, starting from 2005 under George W. Bush, he has argued that in spite of America's generosity, India is not going to be the kind of ally that America wants, which means, and in his summary, in his conclusion, he says that if China were to attack India, India wants America to support it. But if there was an encounter between China and the US, India would rather stay out of it. So basically, he's telling the American policymakers, in fact, he addresses President Biden directly and says, if you think India is going to be a military ally like your other allies, that is not going to happen. He also explicitly says that India is not interested in supporting the international liberal order, and therefore basically saying that America should recalibrate its partnership with India, keeping this in mind. How do you react, sir?
Okay, so there are many ways that I can answer this question, but let me pick up 2 threads. One, this thought has already been answered by our foreign minister long back, somewhere in West, when he was addressing a little press conference or meeting. And his very straightforward response to a question was, West's problem is our problem, and our problem is not West's problem. Now, actually, that sums up India's strategic thought and direction of our foreign policy in many, many ways. Now, this particular article that you're talking about, once again, asking India to do what America expects her to do. And if I just put foreign minister's quote here, so America's interest or America's problem is India's problem, but India's problem is not America's problem. That's one way. The other way is, actually, he is trying to, if I use the word academic or intellectual coercion of India, this particular article being published in a particular publication gets a direct hearing from the White House. And therefore, he is trying to say things in a more blunt and a direct manner, which perhaps in a diplomatic language is not said in those many ways. So what is the big import of his argument? He says that India should become a military alliance partner to USA. And in doing so, he very conveniently forgets the entire history of India post-independence. When in our history, when we were very, very poor country, did we decide to get on the bandwagon of USA or USSR during Cold War and all that? We were actually the champion of non-aligned movement. That's what our core foreign policy objectives and thought process is. And I don't think it has changed. You have, I've been hearing you have mentioned in one of the conversations that India, instead of either joining USA or aligning with China or anybody else, wishes to create its own pole, leading the South.
Yeah.
USA finds it very difficult to absorb this reality. So I feel that right now, this thought that since USA is doing A, B, C, D things, India should become a typical alliance partner to USA. I don't think it is likely to happen.
You know, sir, I mean, you raised a very interesting point about that India's continuity of India's policy of remaining non-aligned has fundamentally not changed. The only shift is that this new phrase that India uses of multi-alignment. The non-alignment was, we are neither with you and we are not with you either. But multi-alignment says we are with you as well as we are with you in that sense, as long as it benefits India. So that is the caveat, right? If having a relationship with it. But Ashley Tellis, he's a very interesting person, right? He's clearly heard often in the administration. There is no doubt that he has a voice in Washington, and he's been here for decades, highly respected. But he is also well received in Delhi. So my question is it possible that Ashley Tellis is actually a vehicle for India sending the message to the United States, saying, look, there is a limit to how far we can go with you. We need you to balance China. We need you to improve our technological capabilities in the defense arena. However, we are not going to become the battlefield where America fights China. Is it possible that that's the message that Ashley Tellis is trying to send? Or is it the opposite, saying that, look, you can't trust India. India only wants to improve, take what it wants and what it can from the US. And so he uses the word asymmetric relationship, basically saying that the gifts are coming from only one angle. It's US giving things to India, India taking what it can from the US without offering much in return.
Okay. So when you talk about asymmetric relationship in diplomatic zone or arena, aren't we coping up with asymmetric relationship in our economic relations with so many countries? When you say adverse balance of payment, what is it? That the trade is not in one party's favor, and yet the trade is going on.
Yes.
Now, if it is true in economic field, I'm sure it can also be managed in diplomatic domain. An asymmetric relationship bound to be there, because not all the powers, not all the states are at the same level of CNP, if I use the word comprehensive national power. So there will be a more powerful country, there will be less powerful country, and there will be least powerful country. And yet there will be a relationship, there will be a network, there will be sort of a different kind of groupings. Everything is typically asymmetric. So what is so strange about it? So asymmetric relationship between India and USA, to my mind, is the reality. However, there is I would say, this is the public debate. Now, my understanding is also that there are things which happen in public, what we are discussing today. There are things which are known and discussed between the top leaders, not in public domain. And there are things which are actually passed on from generation to generation of leadership. That is called understanding of the nation, their grand vision and other things. So when you examine the US-India relationship in these three layers, you will see what is available in public domain. We will not know what is also available in leader to leader or government to government domain. And definitely the large convergence, or I would say the strategic convergence of thought, ideas, love of freedom, liberal world, and everything else. It is nation to nation relationship. So it's a multi-layered relationship, cannot be simplified to the level that because USA has done A, B, C, India should do E, F, G. I think that is making things very, very simple. Relations between nations is a very complex chemistry, and it operates at different level. I'm sure Professor Tellis knows that. But this message, when it is coming in a very stark manner, I'm not too sure if it is going to serve the larger interest of both India and USA.
So there is a lot of truth to this claim that there is a natural relationship between the United States and America. Both countries are secular, liberal, democratic countries. Both are pluralistic. And there are now nearly 4 million Indians people of Indian origin in North America, and they're doing phenomenally well. Without doubt, if you look at the demographics, it is the most educated and one of the highly, shall we say, productive and rich communities in the US. One congressman recently made the claim that Indian Americans are about 1% of the population, but pay 6% of the income tax that we do. So the Indian American community is a major contributor to America in the arena of knowledge, wealth, and also in terms of bringing cultural diversity. When people celebrate Diwali and Holi here in the I see all my elected local representatives wearing saris and kurta pajamas. It brings a lot of color to America, which is otherwise quite bland itself. So I think that perhaps America, using the same old Cold War paradigm, is rushing this marriage. It's like they want to have a shotgun wedding when India really wants a long dating period before they say, well, let's date for a couple of years, then maybe we'll move in and then we'll see. So India wants time to adjust to this new relationship. But I also sense that there is also a suspicion.
If I just stop you for a second,
sure.
You have brilliantly summed up the thoughts that I was trying to put across. After all, you people have not contributed. In the last 75 years, Indian diaspora sitting in USA has only strengthened the United States of America. Is it not a kind of a give back to America?
Oh, yes.
Indirectly?
Yes.
Right? So when you say that since America has given high technology to India and therefore India should become an alliance partner, what about your contribution to America for the last 75 years? In which way it has been paid back to us? If I just go back into history a little bit, till 2000, around when the nuclear deal and other things started out, prior to that, all those 40, 30 years, we were not at all on the radar of America. Pakistan was their darling. We were absolutely sidelined. Nobody was interested. We fought 62 war. We had other issues. Where was America then? So what I'm trying to put across to you is that Indians, Indian diaspora, or India as a nation has always, I would say, supported the idea for which America is living. We have always supported the idea of freedom, liberty, democracy, and everything. And that is why not one, many, many presidents of United States have said India and USA are the natural partners. So when there is an understanding of that nature, now bringing it down to a level key, since we have given this technology, so become a military partner or military alliance, I think it is trying to underplay the relationship grade, I would say.
This is a slightly awkward conversation for me. It is like, for me, like saying that my parents are having a tiff because I'm also an American and also an Indian. But there's one fundamental difference. While there are so much commonalities between India and the US when it comes to democracy, pluralism, religious pluralism, cultural diversity, America is an imperial power. India has never been one. See, that is
Yes.
huge. America is aggressive. In the 21st century, America has waged two wars which have lasted 2 decades.
Yes.
And America is often very hypocritical in its application of values that it itself espouses. So,
Yes.
so when Russia attacks Ukraine, it's violating laws and saying we cannot expand borders through annexations. But when Israel annexes Golan Heights, it's okay and endorsed by the US. So I understand that one of the characteristics of American foreign policy is an inherent hypocrisy. In fact, when the Ukraine war started, in a very heated argument with me, a very prominent foreign policy thinker turned around and said, yes, Muqtedar, I know it's hypocritical, but I don't care. See, that was the point, that
Yes.
right now it's in our interest.
Yes.
But I sense I get a lot of comments, hundreds of comments on these discussions. And among the public, there is clearly a suspicion of the United States, and there is a distrust of the United States. And I actually, when you listen very carefully, even to the External Affairs Minister, Dr. Jaishankar, he talks about us versus the way he talks about the West is clearly not like
Yes.
the Japanese talk. Japanese think they are part of the West. Indians
Yes.
apparently don't think that they're part of the West. And you can see that he is also, in spite of the fact that he has so many meetings now with Blinken and others, he also seems quite unwilling to trust the United States. Like, is there anything that could change that?
Yeah. So now you brought up a very good point. Tell me, just for discussion's sake, that India does what Ashley Tellis wants India to do. What will history tell us? From 1947 till 1971, Pakistan was their alliance partner.
Yes.
What happened? How did America support Pakistan when 71 was division was taking place? When the Pakistan was splitting, existential threat. So USS Enterprise was sailing somewhere and was trying to reach Bay of Bengal. It never reached. Pakistan got split. This happened right next door to us, in our living memory, to a military alliance partner. Now, if that is the history's lesson to India, how should India react to that? How should India absorb that historical fact? It is not just one. There are many, many examples that I can give, and you have used that word. It sums up everything, hypocritical. And I'm sure the author is not unaware of these historical, I would say, evidences, and yet demanding what is being demanded in the paper. It's strange.
Yeah, I mean, I have no qualms in reminding the reviewers that we have abandoned the Kurds twice. In 1991, after the first Iraq war, when Saddam Hussein went and massacred the Kurds because we had incited them to rise against him. And then most recently now, again, we abandoned the Kurds. So yes, the United States has often used other people, and we have a very short-term memory when it comes to our own history, whereas we are very quick to talk about other people's history. So yes, American foreign policy, I mean, I teach American foreign policy and I engage with it. It is one of the most complicated thing, and there are all kinds of tensions there. With domestic lobbies, etc. There's a lot of money involved in it. It's close to $1 trillion project. And therefore, there is also both moral and otherwise corruption. You know, in the beginning of this Ukraine war, I was so against the war because I saw that we were spending literally billions of dollars. And then I suddenly realized that actually we are financially benefiting because all America is doing is taking the money from the public sector and putting it in America's private sector. But all the Europeans who are buying weapons are actually buying American weapons to give to Ukrainians. So we are actually, and now we are also the biggest supplier of oil to Europe. So we are making a lot of money of this war. So yes, I understand that American motivations are complicated. But I want to turn towards this India-China relationship. And sir, I know the mood in India is very different towards China, but I think that unless India and China become partners, not just calm the scene, the 21st century will not be the Asian century. without a partnership between India and China. How do you see this relationship? Is China's belligerence on the border a reaction to India's participation in the Quad, or is there something inherently aggressive about China, which we did not witness until 2020? Really, from 62 to 2020, there was some kind of a calm on the border. So, what is agitating this relationship? How do you see it?
Okay. So as far as India-China relationship is concerned, I'll again divide it in a couple of stages, I would say. One, of course, everybody is aware that we have a serious I would say border issues. Now, it's been going on from 1947 till Galwan took place. Now, a large part of this was absolutely incident-free, and therefore, we felt that perhaps China is willing to sail with us, allow time to pass, and as we come closer and trade and other things, so many things keep happening, there will be a time when we'll be able to amicably resolve this border issue. Galwan changed that everything for us, right? Then, 2-3 things came out from there. One, we were absolutely shocked and surprised that there are 3 or 4 proper agreements about the border management between India and China. A responsible large power, I would say number 2 power today, has thrown all those agreements out of the window. How can you do that? So, as far as India is concerned, our position is very clear vis-a-vis China, that our relations are not normal, very clear. And the responsibility rests with China because it is she who has violated, that is China which has violated all the agreements, not India. So whether somebody says it or not, but the aggression that we saw in Galwan is entirely rests on China's shoulder. That's number one. Having learned that lesson, we did what we were required to do. And as we speak, I can say with 100% surety that India is fully capable of dealing with China militarily. And we are quite clear in our mind that we don't expect any other power to come and fight for us. What perhaps Ashley Tellis was trying to tell us, that if India expects America to come to fight with China, they are not going to do it. We don't expect that. We don't expect any other country to do that for us. If it happens, India will be able to deal with it. Now, whether it will happen or not, only time will tell. I think Chinese have also read the tea leaves. They have also realized that there are issues. An outright decisive victory against India is not going to happen. I mean, just imagine the Ukraine and Russian war, where everybody thought that in first 13 days, Russia will kick Ukraine out. So now it is a duel between India and China. It's not a small thing. So I'm sure they are aware of that. They are also aware that it is not just that front. There are other fronts. There's a front towards South China Sea. There's a front towards Japan. There is a exposure towards USA. And there's exposure towards Taiwan. So it will be very, very difficult for China to take that gamble. We are hearing that she's going to punish Taiwan, then she's going to punish India, then she will punish Japan. Well, it is going to take hell of a lot of calculation to do that. But having said all that, the bottom line is India is capable of and prepared to deal with China. That is as far as the military aspect is concerned. Our defense minister, just you mentioned in the beginning of this discussion, was absolutely categorical in explaining this to or presenting this case to Chinese counterpart, that our relationship is not normal. There is a problem and we need to resolve it. How do we resolve it? We have to go back in time, pick up all those treaties and papers which are lying outside the window now and resume from there. That's one way. Or wait for time to pass and see how it happens.
There is a tremendous mobilization, especially on the Galwan side of the border. I mean, some of the reports suggest that the Chinese have about 60,000 troops on the border, and India is trying to match it. So we actually have highly mobilized forces right now on the border, right? Like close to 100,000 soldiers facing each other. That is a highly expensive exercise for both countries, right? Especially for a country like India, which still has a lot of things to do. India is growing rapidly, developing rapidly, but it still has a lot of developmental needs. I want to present an idea to you. Let's say that China does try to invade Taiwan. And if it does, the second front I think the US will want to open is the land front. The sea battle will be near Taiwan. The ground battle will be on India's borders. So US may even want to send troops, may provide all the weapons that India needs, but the fighting will happen in India, on the Indian border. So I would rather that India spend more energy trying to patch up with China than spend energy chasing the possibility that America will share critical technologies that will in exchange for military alliance.
So this possibility or scenario that you just painted may actually become a reality if we follow Ashley Tellis's advice and fall into American lap. The day it happens, the lines are drawn, and Chinese will tell us straight away that, okay, you are on that side, let's have it here. The reason why Chinese are also, if I use the word restraining themselves or doing some more calculation, because India has not shown readiness to join any military alliance. At the same time, parallelly, it has also conveyed to China in no uncertain term that we are capable of dealing with you. Now, as far as those 60,000 or 100,000 troops and other things are concerned, see, you must remember this war is going to be fought in a terrain nowhere else in the world people have fought and seen those areas. It's all 17,000, 16,000 feet high altitude areas, where survival itself is a problem. Forget about launching large-scale offensive here and there and things like that. The amassing of troops, I'm not saying that is just for the show. Yes, very much threat in being. But let me tell you, from the military understanding, the threat actually manifests in three forms. One is threat in the making, which is the strongest part of the threat, I would say. The second is threat in being. Whatever you have made or structured or put together, it is located somewhere. And the third is threat applied or force applied. Now, in military understanding, force, when it is applied, it is the weakest. Because now you have applied your force, the opponent is now ready, or he's absolutely prepared to understand your design, and he'll be able to counter it in different manners. The threat in being, when you have your forces available at different places in a ready to fire mode, is a little more confusing. You do not know where and who is going to strike. And if I take at the larger global level, you have mentioned the scenario when Japan is sitting there, Taiwan is sitting there, India is sitting here, USA is also somewhere. When these forces are located in different places, it's a very difficult choice for any country to make. So this is a threat in being. What we are discussing, Professor Tellis's article, threat in the making.
Yeah.
He's trying to create that alliance, so it becomes becomes clear to China that, okay, these are the military powers which are joining hands together. What India is trying to explain is, it is not required to be done this way. Let it remain in the realm of uncertainty. Let China guess how close they have become. Are they going to join hands together or not? And yet, do not give any provocation or an excuse to China to use that as an excuse and start a military conflict. So to my mind, this stage, when threats are being made, and are also co-located, not applied, is the best scenario for all these powers that we are talking about, and a very difficult situation, very difficult choice for China to make.
Sir, I mean, and those are very profound points you have made. I want to turn a little bit to what happened in Poonch, especially because of your past connections, and you have trained many of these people from the Rashtriya Rifles, etc. How is the front? I mean, there is this understanding that in 2021, Pakistan and India kind of agreed upon keeping the LOC calm, and it has kind of remained calm as compared to LAC. But how serious are going to be the consequences of the Poonch attack, and what kind of an impact it is going to have on this? Is there going to be this resurgence of this idea of two fronts defense needed, and then also distracts India from what's happening on the LAC side of the border, and we are once again required to focus on the LOC?
Okay, so as far as this combination that you spoke about, the two, actually we in India talk about 2.5 front.
Yes.
That other half is what you just referred to, Poonch attack. This is the half front.
Yeah.
Now, the reality is, yes, so reality is we have to deal with it. Let's talk about the other two fronts. One is the Chinese front. We have spoken a lot about it.
Yeah.
The second is Pakistani front.
Yeah.
Now, I don't have to answer that. I think their previous chief has already answered that. That our tanks are rusted and this happened and that happened. Now they can do whatever they want. So I'm not too sure if Pakistan is willing, under the state what they are in today, to use this enhance the half front to 1.5 front and expect China to jump in from that side. That is, if Pakistan wants to be a trigger.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if China wants to be a trigger, it will be demeaning for China to ask Pakistan to do the terrorist strike and do some conventional thing so that India is distracted. Now, then it is almost demeaning itself as a big power, that it cannot deal with India one-on-one.
Yeah.
So this equation works this way. Pakistan will not have the capacity to tell China to come as the second front. It is incapable of dealing with the one front that you're talking about, the conventional front. This half front that you're talking about, that we have to live with it. And we have, like we have demonstrated in the past, we will have our own response mechanism in place to deal with these threats the way they come up, at the time and place of our own choosing. I mean, that's a very simple statement which is given, that India reserves the right to counter this threat or to react at a time and place of its own choosing. Right now, there are things happening in India, so we are keeping quiet. That does not mean that it is going to be there forever. So this is the dynamics of 2.5 front between India and China and Pakistan is concerned. But definitely, these are irritating things. But as I said very honestly, we have to live with it. We are slowly and gradually finding response mechanism. We have done it twice, Balakot and other things that you are aware of, and perhaps it will continue in future also. And in doing so, we have also called that so-called nuclear bluff of Pakistan. This is something interesting that Pakistan should be aware of, that 1999 was a mini conventional war fought under the nuclear sort of capabilities. And these little things which are happening when Balakot and other thing took place, this also happened in spite of they having what somebody used, that 250 gram ka bomb or some tactical nuclear weapons and everything else. So as far as the Pakistan's nuclear umbrella is concerned, that bluff is going to be called out. And India, I think, is going to exercise much greater freedom to deal with these threats, pinpricks, as and when they come up in our own time and place of choosing.
So this is my last question to you, and this is it's more like an academic question. So when you have events like the SCO defense ministers meeting, and they discuss policy issues, sometimes they overlap with the foreign ministers meetings, for example. The issues probably are very similar. But how is it different? What really happens after they have this discussion, like the India-China's discussion before? Like, is there a follow-up in terms of, like, I know there have been 16 or 18 meetings between the two military officers on the border between India and China, but like, how do these events help in progressing the defense to defense dialogue as opposed to the foreign ministers?
So defense to defense dialogue is not a independent or on their own kind of affair. Everything is a subset of each layer. And of course, the uppermost is the foreign ministry when it deals with country A, B, C, and D. And then those thoughts, or I would say the policies, are then translated, and that military actions, whenever it happens, whenever there is a problem at the front and other things. So there is a kind of an interplay or interactive parlance going on within the setup also, between Ministry of External Affairs, Ministry of Defense. And at multiple levels, these dialogues are ongoing. Now, why these discussions at the military officers levels are important? Because these are the people who are closest on the ground. They know the ground reality. And if something is not comfortable to a senior military commander or the military leaders, this is going to be passed on to the counterpart. It will also be passed on to our Ministry of Defense and Ministry of External Affairs that these things are not working out. And therefore, when the ministers meet, they flag those differences or the problems and try and resolve it at that level. So they are not independent of each other. They are also, they are kind of a link to the same chain. It goes from up and down.
General VP Singh, thank you very much for this wonderful conversation. I have learned a lot from you, and I hope my students and my viewers will also benefit from this enriching dialogue. For those of you who are watching, do the needful again. Make sure you subscribe to Khanversations, like the video, ring the bell icon, and make sure you share it with your friends. General Saab, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Kind of you.